Shut up and sit down.
Hey there, Champagne Dreamers. This is Miss J, and I've got something a little bit different for you today. Hopefully you're all caught up on Janessa After Dark, episodes 1, 2, and 3. Episode 1 features boylesque impresario and adult film star Chris Harder. Episode 2 features performer and drag show director Kelly Coxsyn, who also happens to be my fabulous drag daughter. And episode 3 features indie horror director Brooklyn Ewing, director of the indie hit She Was So Pretty, and the sequel, forthcoming later this year, She Was So Pretty 2, Be Good for Goodness Sake. Now, all three of those interviews were so chock full and just bursting with decadent goodness that we couldn't get everything into the individual episodes. And so here we are with our first episode that I like to call Sloppy Seconds. Here's where you'll get to hear pieces of the interviews that didn't make it into the actual episode. In between, I'll give you a little bit of context about what we were talking about, and hopefully these little snippets will give you an even greater appreciation for my fantastic Janessa After Dark guests. So let's get started, shall we? Let's start with episode 3 guest Brooklyn Ewing. In this pair of clips, we start by setting up our Skype interview and showing off my usual lack of technical prowess, as neither of us can figure out why I can see her, but she can't see me. Then we play a little game that I like to call Geography is Fun and compare notes on our respective home bases. Yeah, can you see me?
No.
Oh, I'm a mystery. Well, that's good, because I'm prettier in the dark, so it's...
Oh, me too. I was like, oh, I'm not even brushing my hair for this. Here I am.
That's all right, it's a podcast. I have a face made for podcasting. So how big is Parkersburg?
I don't know, honestly. There's people here. It's much... I'm like looking around to see if like, Jerry
well, there's 3 people in this room.
No, I don't know. It's decent. I think it's like maybe the second or third largest city in West Virginia. So it's not small by any means, but it's also pretty closed-minded, pretty old school, Republican country boy, good old boy attitude.
Oh yeah, I'm from North Dakota. I smell what you're stepping in. In her interview for episode 3, Brooklyn revealed one of her favorite icons, Pee Wee Herman. In the following outtake, we talk a little bit about some cosplay opportunities she thinks that I might have, as well as talking about the challenges of nude photo shoots. Enjoy.
I think that you could cosplay as Miss Yvonne and it would be the greatest cosplay of all time.
Well, and I have a dress that's sort of like that I wore. I was in a production of Hairspray last summer.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
And I have this great sort of vintage, like, red roses dress. And I wore it in my last photo shoot, actually. The community theater had done Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah. And so then I took photos with the big Audrey 2 plant.
Yes.
And so we started in the kind of vintage housewife dress. And then a little bit later on, and these are actually now the photos that I use as the promo photos for season 1 of Janessa After Dark. Mm-hmm. Then I switched into this red sequin dress, and I had a little guy who was playing my Seymour. Yeah. And he was in his nerd outfit, and then he changed into, he was just in underwear and like some bondage gear.
Yeah, I saw those. Those are hot.
Yeah, he's so cute. He's so adorable. He was perfect. And he just is such a good sport. He's just like ready to get naked at the drop of a hat. It's just like not uncomfortable in front of the camera at all. Because I've worked with other people who, they're always like, oh yeah, I totally love to be in a photo shoot or whatever. And then you put them in the little shorts and they got to get drunk and they're a hot mess and they don't know how to pose. And I'm just like, stop.
Yeah, see, girl-wise, I have so many females in my life because I do so many nude shoots. They're just like, yeah, you want me naked? I'm like, actually, could you just keep your clothes on for this one?
Yeah, just...
like, fight clothes back on them. Put them on.
Yeah, put it back on. Put it back on. I know Miranda and I have talked about doing a sort of nude-ish photo shoot, which I'm trying to build up the bravery. I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm nervous because that's, being in drag, there's so many layers of that disguise on. The idea of peeling that off and taking photos, it intrigues me and I'm fascinated. And it was actually kind of my idea, but I also am just a little bit terrified.
Maybe you could first start out, maybe get a Britney Spears-esque nude bodysuit. Then you would be nude, but you could still build up the bottom layer. Maybe do like a naked lie. Maybe that's your first step.
There we go. In the next clip, we talk a little bit about Gorefest filmmaker Eli Roth and his 2016 cannibal classic, Green Inferno. I haven't seen Green Inferno. Have you seen Green Inferno?
I liked it enough that I watched it more than once, but it let me down a little bit. Eli Roth is sometimes funny when I feel like he shouldn't be. Those moments I'm like, oh, you had me and then you let me go. Like, you made me laugh and I don't want to laugh. I want to be, like, disgusted.
Yeah, terrifying.
That's the only thing. There's just some funny stuff that I'm not sure should be in it.
Gotcha. Because I keep thinking I need to see that one.
You should see it just for the gore alone.
See, and I'm not as much of a gore fan. See, I'm like the 80s slasher movies. That's my favorite. It's like where there's a lot of suggestion, there's a lot of that build-up, and there's all the, like, fucked up gender dynamics and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm all up in that business.
I mean, that's the fun stuff, if we're being honest. Like, the 80s stuff is the good stuff. I try to find new stuff that makes me feel like that.
Finally, in this last clip, Brooklyn and I talk about some of our favorite vacation destinations, the right way to do a bucket list, and then the conversation turns to one of my favorite subjects, random crazy porn stores. As you found out in episode 1 of Janessa After Dark, I'm sort of a fan of porn stores, and Brooklyn had some thoughts of her own to share. But then I get 2 weeks in Seattle right after that. Like, Seattle...
Yeah, I hear Seattle's the best. I've never been.
I love it. It's so expensive. I don't know if I could ever live there, but I love traveling there because it's just fantastic. And I always stay right downtown near where work is and stuff. You know, you can walk 5 blocks and run into any kind of food you would want. There's all kinds of entertainment. You just run across weird shit. I was going to Ben de la Creme, who was on RuPaul's Drag Race, was doing a one-man show called Inferno A Go-Go. And I was on my way to that, and we drove by this other theater that was like midnight showing of John Waters' Multiple Maniac. The Criterion Collection restored it, and so the Seattle International Film Festival was showing it, and Mink Stole was there to introduce it. So I went to Ben de la Creme, and then I walked to Hot Mama's Pizza, and then I walked back down the street, and I went and saw Multiple Maniacs and Mink Stole. And Mink Stole, for the opening, was interviewed by Peaches Christ, who's a fantastic drag performer.
That's a great name.
It was like a bucket list night. I didn't even know it was on my bucket list, and it just was like, well, it's on there, and now it's already done.
That rules. It's like when you make the to-do list and you add the thing that you know you already did just so you can check it off.
Just so you can check it off, yep.
That's awesome. I'm jealous. I like Las Vegas. That's my favorite place to go.
I've never been to Vegas.
I love it, but I don't gamble. I just like how insane it is there. Nothing seems real. It's like crazy. And then you step outside of it and everything is just like dead desert. There's like buzzards everywhere and nothing.
I've always wanted to go to the Bunny Ranch. I've always wanted to go just to see it, but then I'm like, do they get like weird creeper tourists who are just like, I don't need a lady. I just want to check it out.
Yeah, the bar is open. You can go in and mingle.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because I have a weird obsession with porn stores.
Well, it's the weirdest place on earth.
And so I'm just fascinated by them. And I'm fascinated by how they're decorated and how they promote themselves to their different clientele. And so whenever I go to new places, I always try to seek out the porn stores just to see what they're like. Because then I get a feeling, okay, this is what this city's all about.
Right? I have to tell you, we drove by our local little weirdo porn store today in town. And Jerry pointed out that there was a sign that says $10 booth use all day. For $10, you can go in and just jerk off at a booth all day long.
And probably not even just jerk off. Like, depending on, like, different states have different laws, but they might have glory holes. They might have little...
You don't have any ones with the ladies, which is what I love, like the weird glass and like it comes up and there's a woman.
Oh, yeah.
Those are so cool. But this one, like $10, I guess you can come in and out all day long. So you have a place to jerk off for $10. I was just like, that seems like a lot of jerking off. I don't know.
Do you get your $10 worth of jerking off? It's hard to know.
I mean, is it worth it just for once, or do you really like keep coming back? I don't know.
One of my favorites in the entire world is in Minneapolis. It's called Sex World.
Ooh,
and it's circus themed. So the main floor where all the DVDs and the toys are and stuff, it's got these alternating neon lights that are like flashing, and it's a little bit crazy, and it looks sort of like a big top.
Aww.
And then you walk down a little hallway and can go to find those dancers. So they have women in like a big aquarium storefront window kind of thing in lingerie, like reading a Cosmo looking mad.
Oh, I want that. I want to be at that. I need to be at that right now.
And you can like point at them and like motion them over to a booth, and then you go get in the booth, and then you put the money in and the thing slides up and they'll dance for you or whatever. And mostly they just sit in there looking mad. Like they just look like they're not happy with life.
Well, yeah, that's the best part of it, the misery.
And then you go upstairs, so there's like another floor, and you go up in the elevator, and then there's this like coin-operated giant penis that you can ride. So you put like 50 cents in or whatever. I haven't actually done it because I'm afraid that I will fall off and die. But
yeah.
It's just like those things outside of Kmart, except that it's a enormous gold penis.
That's amazing. Why aren't we best friends? I want to go on a journey with you where we just document all of this.
I was really tempted at one point. I was like, I should write a book about porn stores. Because now with the internet, they're really kind of struggling. And so it's interesting to see how they change and rebrand and all that kind of stuff. I'm fascinated by them.
Yeah, I am too. I can agree. Like, I love it. But it's also very dangerous as a ladybird to go in them and just like browse. You get the old creeps in there.
Yeah, you get the lurkers. Or you go in with a boyfriend and then they just are like, have you seen our line of essential oils? And it's like, all kinds of people can be into the weird freaky shit. Like, but they just look at you and they think they know like what you're about.
Yes, I hate that. Although I will say there's a porn store outside of Marietta, Ohio, and there's this old woman that works there. She's probably like almost 70, I'd say. And she is so good at knowing what people are into, and she is so good at remembering what you purchased. I'd say I've been in there like maybe once every 8 months to a year, and I'll come back in and she'll be like, oh, how'd you like Busty Cop 7? Did that work out for you? And I'm like, how in the fuck do you remember that?
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, she's incredible. That's a dime a dozen. There's nobody like her in the world, really.
And another one that was my favorite, and I don't know if they're like this anymore, I need to go back down, but in Dickinson, North Dakota, which is this little, like, podunk town. Dickinson. And even worse, the high school, I think they changed it, but the high school mascot used to be the Midgets.
No.
The Dickinson Midgets. And so they had this store called the Midget Newsstand. And it was the weirdest store in the world because North Dakota, I don't know if they quit this or if they changed it or whatever, but there used to be a law in the books that only a certain percentage of your inventory could be adult-specific products, could be X-rated. So the porn store in Minot, North Dakota, the way they got around that is that they had this janky storage room way in the back behind the booths. And they had just like boxes and boxes and boxes of old magazines. So Time Magazine, National Geographic, Newsweek, and theoretically, if you wanted to, you could go hang out in that storage room with the bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. And you could dig through these boxes and you could buy magazines for like 10 cents a piece or whatever. So that was how they got over their proportion of the inventory being non-adult. The Midget Newsstand in Dickinson, what they did, the back of the store is where all the porn and the toys and all the adult stuff, and there was this like Western style swinging door that you went through.
Yes.
And the front part of the store was like the weirdest garage sale thrift store in the world.
Oh, that's my home. I'll move there.
I know, it's fantastic, where they just like went and clearly just found whatever. So they would have like old paperback books. And for a while they had like 20 of those weird dolls that they used to do in the 80s where they would crochet a dress and put it on like a bottle.
Yeah.
And they would have the plastic body like stuck to the top of the bottle and then make the big elaborate dress. They had like 20 of them like on these shelves. It was crazy. So we used to always go in there and like the porn, their selection was always terrible. They never had good porn anyway. But we would go and we would just look at the thrift store stuff in the front. Go into the Midget Newsstand and we would find weird thrift store kind of shit all the time.
I love that. I'm going in there and getting a bunch of weird crochet dolls and a dildo. Like, that's everything I've ever needed.
Yeah.
I'm headed there now.
Well, get in the car. We'll see you in 2 days.
Right?
Meet you there.
You rule.
Now, episode 1 guest Chris Harner and I have actually known each other for a long time. As we talked about during our interview, he and I were attending UND at the same time. He was a freshman baby gay with an interest in theatrical performance, and I was a master's student desperately avoiding my thesis by taking some technical theater classes. We've kept in touch over the years, but of course, as our interview started, we took a little bit of time to get reacquainted, and as you'll see, our "what have you been up to lately" answers are different than most people's.
Side note, congrats on taking that on. So forgive me for comparing this, but is it like Mary Kay where you sell the products?
So I did with Tyra Beauty, yeah. It was like Mary Kay where you sell the products and you make a commission or whatever. And now Tyra's booting us to the curb. She's getting rid of the beauty tainers.
Oh, Tyra.
I know.
She just wants the gay money, that's all.
That bitch.
Right, you heard it here first.
How are you?
Good. I'm finishing rhinestoning some assholes that I'm gonna shake around this weekend in Minneapolis.
Oh, well, that's good.
I know, right? You know, one does what one must.
That's right.
But it's been a busy year so far, but things are going well.
In this second clip, Harder and I talk a little bit about his work with David Drake, who directed his one-man show Big Bright Star, and Chris makes a startling revelation about his history with queer literature. In college, of course, I was studying, queer literature. I was also in the honors program, so I was building a lot of my own classes and doing independent studies. And I did some independent studies on queer literature and queer drama and queer theater and those kinds of things. And of course, The Night Larry Kramer Kissed Me was one of the first things that I went to. It was one of those more mainstream pieces. So it was one that people had heard of outside of just kind of the smaller queer literature world.
Right.
So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I got to find out about this.
Yeah, and I mean, David traveled all over the world with that show, and he already knows this. So I've actually never read The Night Larry Kramer Kissed Me. And once... I know it's a sin. But once he had decided to direct the show, he was seeing some similarities. Just, again, this idea of, I play myself as a little boy, and I know he plays himself as a boy in his show. And so once he told me that, and we began really looking at that monologue, I was scared to read his script because I didn't want to steal from his words or his experience. So now that we've done the show and I feel secure in that character, I'm going to read it. That's always been kind of funny to me, just as someone who's worked with him now for 2 months, because that is such a seminal piece of gay theater, especially for the time it's written in.
All right, maybe it wasn't that startling, but a bitch has to get you with some clickbait somewhere, you know what I mean? Let's move on to the next episode. Last but certainly not least, here are a few outtakes from my conversation with my drag daughter, Kelly Coxsyn, starting with this discussion of who Kelly Coxsyn is, how Kelly gets into character, and how she uses what she knows about her character to shape and craft her performances. This segment has some great ideas for budding drag performers who are looking for ways to decide what songs or what looks might fit them best. So new drag queens, this is for you.
I know who Kelly Coxsyn is as a character. If Kelly Coxsyn were her own person, I know exactly who she would be. I know exactly what she would look like. I know what she would do for fun on the weekends. I know who she would be friends with and who she wouldn't be friends with, which is not many people. But I have a well thought out idea of who Kelly is. And so when I'm going into doing a show, or even just thinking of what I want to do for a performance, okay, that song's really popular on the radio right now, and a lot of people have told me, like, oh, you should do that in a show. I'm like, no, I would never, ever, ever perform that song. It doesn't fit with my character. It doesn't fit with my performance style. I just can't even wrap my head around like how I would do that performance. And I don't know that there's necessarily that awareness, across the board with, queens and kings, where people are just kind of picking whatever songs are popular at the time.
When I see somebody who's being very thoughtful, then I'm just like, come here, little baby queen or king. Like, let me nurture you, because you are what we need more of. You are what we need happening right now.
I feel like when I go out there to perform a song, I am very aware of the mood and the attitude, and I try to do things in the performance, especially with my lip sync. I try to be spot on every time, and if that song is sassy and has attitude, I'm going to give sass and attitude. If that song is like a beautiful, sad, longing remembrance song, I'm going to try to emulate that in my performance.
Now, this second outtake from my conversation with Kelly Coxsyn is the one that has the potential to be the most, controversial. Kelly and I are both active drag queens, performers, and show directors who've been working in that aspect of the business in North Dakota for a long time. While this part of the conversation didn't make it into our final podcast interview, I thought it had some interesting insights for those who are wondering how to direct and plan drag shows, and a little bit of the discussion of different types of drag performance. We also talk a little bit about the art of drag king performance, and how it fits in with the shows that we plan and produce, and in the world of drag as a whole.
And we had had a couple of regular performers like Mia Starr who did every show, but there was also a mixture that needs to happen where you need to have a couple of consistent performers that are there every month and then just sprinkle in the spice of some additional performers. Because if it was just me hosting a show with a bunch of new bitches every month and no one knew who these people were or they had never seen them perform, I mean, that might work against the show, because then people will be like, I don't know if I should go to the show because I don't recognize these names, or I've never seen them perform. I don't know what to expect. Whereas if it's, 2 or 3 solid performers that they know will bring it, and then a couple of other performers that they're excited to see for the first time, that to me ended up being the best kind of formula for a show.
I want to know your thoughts on drag kings, because I know it's a very different style of performance, and I know that people, usually feel some type of way, whichever type it is, about having mixed shows where you have queens and kings together, what the ratios should be. What are your thoughts on, having that kind of mixed representation in a show?
Obviously, overall, I think it's great whenever you can show the widest variety and add the most flavor possible. So to have some skinny bitches that can go out there and wear the bra and panties and do the sexy little numbers, cool. Having some big sassy bitches that can go out and serve up some fabulous sequins and a lot of attitude, great. Drag king, yeah, cool. Somebody that goes out and does like the weird quirky stuff, yeah. I'm all about having a huge variety whenever possible. The problem that I've noticed over the years as a show producer, and I don't know how to word this in a way that's not going to get me blacklisted for life.
From all of the lesbian softball teams in Fargo-Moorhead and surrounding areas.
I understand that when it comes to being a drag queen, there are certain things where you could do drag queen the easy way, where you order a bunch of big hair, everything sequin, paint a fantastic face, and boom, you're a drag queen. And you can go out and do any performance with that outfit and you'd be fine, which, hello, I've done that a million times. But I feel like when it comes to being a drag king, and maybe it's because I just don't understand that art form as well, because, obviously I can't be a drag king, but the wearing jeans and a t-shirt and then just going out and performing a song in jeans and a t-shirt, I don't understand that. And I think that's where a lot of audience members also get a little confused, or for lack of a better term, turned off, is because they're not getting it either. And that in a mixture of a show where you have drag queens coming in all shapes and sizes, giving all different variety of performances with the sequins and the big hair or the leather and crazy nails, whatever it might be. And then you put a drag king in the mix who's wearing jeans and a t-shirt and singing a top 40 Maroon 5 song. You're like, what is that? What is the intended entertainment value of this performance is probably the best way to say it.
It loses a lot of the theatricality for a lot of the drag kings that I've seen. I mean, I've seen some drag kings that are super theatrical, they're super into costuming, and they bring a lot to the performance. And that's what I want to see. I want to see people who really want to put on a performance, and I've said it before and people get mad and I don't care. I don't need to pay a cover charge to see a lesbian in a button-up Western shirt and jeans. I can just go to Lowe's or Home Depot. Yes, you'll get some kings. They're super real. If you have one king in a show who can do that, that's fine. The problem is if you have 6 kings that are just wearing bland outfits and trying to skate by on this realness, it gets fucking boring.
Well, and I think, speaking to that, let's say I'm producing a show, and on one hand I have Mia Starr, who again, like I previously talked about, everything is meticulous. Everything that she brings and that she wears for that number was thought out, was planned, and is executed flawlessly. On the other hand, I have a drag king in jeans and a t-shirt. I don't know how anybody can fault a producer or a host of a show for looking at those two various options. I don't know how we could be faulted for saying one is superior to the other.
They both have their appeal, and I think they both have some interest to them, but if you're putting on a show and if the performance aspect of it is what you're going for, and especially for a show like Hell on Heels where you have a smaller number of performers doing more numbers, you need to make sure you're getting performers who can give you a variety of performances themselves.
Well, and that's my whole thing, and this has been my attitude across the board with any performer, is if I book you in a show and I don't know much about you, I don't care if you've been performing for 2 months or 20 years. If I don't know much about you and I've never seen you perform, but I gave you a chance and I put you in a show for a few numbers, I'm certainly gonna talk to my friends and regulars that come to our show at intermission or after the show and find out what they thought about you as a performer. And if they didn't really care for what you were doing or your performance, or they didn't think that your performance was good, or, you know, like you had put time and energy and thought into your performance, I'm probably not going to have you back. And for me, I've been saying for years, give me a drag king who's going to go on eBay and buy the fucking white Elvis Las Vegas costume, do their hair up in a big black pompadour with the sideburns, and it's going to come out and do the live audio version of Elvis performing in Vegas with the dance moves and everything. Like, that would be amazing.
Because that's a performance. That's something that I want to see. And it's not just about the kings. You know, over the years, I've seen it more from kings that's resting on simple, everyday kind of clothing or whatever. It's the same thing if you've got a baby queen who, like, runs to Walmart and just pulls something off the rack from the Kathy Lee collection and just stumbles on stage and doesn't know their words. I mean, I'm not going to book that either. Like, it's not just about the kings. God forbid, when Eminem was big, I swear, I had kings coming out of my ears who wanted to wear Adidas track shorts and white tank tops, and they all wanted to stand with fake microphones in front of their mouths. And I'm like, we know you ain't Eminem.
Right.
This is a drag show. The jig is up. They know that you are not actually singing. You don't need no fake microphones. I finally had to say no more fake microphones. They're done. Learn your words, put them away. In this third section, I talk about one of my favorite drag king performers, and we also explore a little bit of the difference between the types of theatricality that are available to drag queens versus drag kings, and how the performance of masculinity versus femininity is very different. There was a king from Winnipeg. I don't know if he's still in Winnipeg or if he moved somewhere else. His name was Carlos Las Vegas, and he was phenomenal. I mean, he came in and he did one number where he had this crazy Porter Wagner kind of vest, or like a suit that had all these rhinestones and these details and this cape. And at some point he took off the cape and turned around, and the pants were buttless chaps.
Oh my God.
And it was this whole thing. And then the next time he came out in this leather outfit and was doing this like crazy routine with candles and like dripping wax on himself. I mean, it was a fucking show. Oh, okay. I see what you're doing here. I see you. Because people will always tell me, they're like, oh, well, femininity is so much easier to parody or to lampoon or to make bigger. There's always ways you can make masculinity bigger, more ridiculous. Or I really like some of the things that Nick Fitz does, where he plays this sort of man who's a little bit feminine. And so he'll play the sort of feminine man. And I think that that's very interesting. Or queens who will play with the more masculine women. So like a little bit of kind of a baby dyke kind of look or performance. I think that can be very interesting. So it can be done.
The options are endless. I would love if somebody came out with the guy liner and the super dyed jet black hair and did Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day and did like a whole Green Day thing. Or somebody came out with a red wig and two braids and a bandana on and nailed a Willie Nelson thing. There's so much variety out there. When you already look at the market and see that there are two drag kings who do more of the real kind of stuff where they wear jeans and like the flannel shirt or t-shirt, why would you want to be number three? Why, as a new performer, are you not coming out and saying, okay, they're doing that, that's cool, I'm going to be over here doing this?
Now, before you get out your torches and your pitchforks and come looking for us, in this next outtake, Kelly and I talk about the value of the diversity that's found across the drag performance spectrum. Even if there are things that don't particularly resonate with her or with me, we recognize that there's value in all different kinds of representation and all different kinds of performance.
I kind of feel like I need to also put out there, in defense of all the things that we've talked about today, because you and I have very similar views. We have similar ideas, and I don't know if that's just because we're similar people in our take on the world and our views on the world, or if it's because we've just spent so much goddamn time together that we've essentially like morphed into the same person. But I feel like there is value in every part of this drag world that we live in. There is value to the RuPaul's Drag Race girls. There's value to the pageant systems. There's value in drag kings. There's value in new performers that are like Bambi on ice, just learning their way, going balls to the wall, and just deciding to dive into this crazy world of drag. I think there's value and a need for all of that.
Finally, this last outtake with Kelly Coxsyn is a part of the conversation that, again, while it didn't make it into her interview, actually really inspired the commentary that I did for episode 3 with Brooklyn Ewing. I think that sometimes new performers or people who want there to be more entertainment options wait for somebody to bring those options to them. And what's really important to me, whether you are a budding performer or even if you're just not happy with the entertainment options that you have in your community, you always have the ability to make things happen. Build on the skills that you have and ask for help or search out resources on the skills that you don't. Here's the final outtake from my conversation with Kelly Coxsyn.
And if somebody wants there to be a different show or wants there to be a different option for shows, pick up the phone, call a bar, say, hey, I want to put together a show. Let's start talking. Same thing, too, when it comes to new performers. You know, when I started and people would say things like, oh, well, Janessa is your drag mother. Well, you weren't my drag mother. You weren't my drag mother until like a year and a half, 2 years into it. And you were like, oh, I think I'm your drag mother now.
I did just sort of have you by accident. I was just like,
right.
I think I'm your drag mother now.
And it was after the second Miss Moorhead pageant I did. It was like a year into me doing the whole thing that you were like, oh, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and be your drag mother. Because I was asking you like a bajillion questions. And I still to this day ask questions. If I'm backstage and I see a killer wig or I see really great costume jewelry, I constantly ask people, where did you get that? Who's the seller on eBay? What's their name? I want to know about that.
Yeah, people are surprised or would be surprised by how much other performers are willing to share and willing to help and willing to give advice. I mean, we may not be standing on the street corner like, who wants to be a drag queen? Anybody? Somebody? Can I help somebody, please? But just because we're not out there searching out people to help, you know, bitches be busy. But if you have questions, if you have things you want to know, let us know. Shoot us an email, shoot us a Facebook message, send us a tweet. Most performers are happy to talk about their performance. That's why they got into the performance, is because they love it. And so they love to talk about it. Well, Champagne Dreamers, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this first Sloppy Seconds episode, bringing you a little bit more of each of our interview guests. If you like this format and want to see more of it, please make sure you leave us a comment on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you found your podcast. You can also send me a message or a comment on my Instagram at JanessaJOfficial or on Facebook at Champagne Dreams Productions. Thanks for listening, and look for a new episode of Janessa After Dark coming soon. This episode of Janessa After Dark, Sloppy Seconds, includes royalty-free music from bensound.com. This episode includes the tracks Actionable, which is our intro, the track Buddy, which played underneath the bumpers, and the track you're listening to right now, which is called Sexy. For these great royalty-free tracks and more, visit bensound, that's BEN sound.com. Janessa After Dark, Sloppy Seconds, is written by Chris M. Stoner, aka Miss Janessa J. Champagne, and is a Champagne Dreams production.